Welcome to the Lonestar Collective podcast. I'm your host, Jesse Williams. I'm joined by co-host Gramps this week. This week's episode is episode number 54. Our guest is Lamont Ratcliff of Texas Medical Marijuana Doctors. How's everybody doing this evening?
Well, how are you?
Doing Good. Awesome.
Glad to see you.
I don't know about anybody else. Are y'all prepared for the 100-degree day we're possibly going to have for the first day of fall?
Wow. Have no choice.
Isn't that something?
Taking my kid to school this morning, comes on the radio. You know, the first day of fall could be 100 degrees. Like, oh, God, why?
Yeah, but it's just supposed to be that one day or something and go right back, I think, a day or two down into the mid-90s or something.
It's going to be abysmal no matter what.
It's going to be tough.
So tell us about yourself, Lamont. How did you get into doing Texas Medical Marijuana Doctors?
Well, I started out with, I'm a registered nurse by trade. So I started out with Wellness Pain and Associates. And what we do is we see individuals that are involved in motor vehicle accidents. So we've been doing that for about 15 years and jumped on the cannabis industry by meeting a physician by the name of Dr. Mark Macbeth, which he was one of the first physicians to be registered through CURT, board certified oncologist with MD Anderson for 35 years. So he and I got together and I created Texas Medical Marijuana Doctors in 2018 and really caught a lot of momentum with it and started strategically planning and marketing well in 2020. And just this past year, on September 1st, when we were able to see patients under the new diagnosis is when things started really taking off for us.
How many patients would y'all say y'all got within this last legislative session with the change of the rules? Like how big of a jump was it for y'all?
It was, we are probably at maybe 3,500 patients.
Wow.
Y'all are at 3,500 right now, or y'all?
Yeah, we were at 35. We were at about 3,500 in August.
Okay.
Yeah. So we have.
And how long have y'all been doing this now?
So we started September. So we're roughly at about 300 to 400 patients a month. Okay. So that roughly kind of gets us around the number that we're at right now. I think right now for the month of last time I looked, we were at 290. I got the report last week. We were at 290 something for the month of September. We still have 2 more weeks to go.
And that's the number of new patients y'all have brought in.
Yeah, that's the number of new patients. However, based on the 1-year recertification, some of those are being grouped. The recertifications have started in September, obviously, after 1 year.
Okay. Nice. That's a nice little, we wish it could be more. Obviously, everybody wishes it could be more, yes. Especially from a business standpoint. But from an advocacy standpoint, it's great hearing that. We still wish the number would be bigger, considering there's almost 30 million, if not more people in Texas.
Right. Yeah, that's tough. You know, one of the things that we're finding out, just being on the front line, me speaking to my individuals that I have in a department that does nothing but set appointments. So my appointment setters, they spend half of the time on the phone educating and letting them know that, hey, you do have the opportunity to see a doctor. And if your diagnosis fits, then you'll be able to get up under the Texas program. So you know, just educating is half of the conversation, because I'm getting reports and wondering why you're on the phone to book one appointment for 14 minutes. And they're saying like, hey, I'm spending the first 8 minutes letting them know that this is legal, that they have this opportunity.
Yeah,
we got a lot of work to do with that. We have a lot of work to do with that.
Yeah, we talk about that almost every week, don't we, Jesse? Where education is the number one key, not just with lawmakers, but with the people, the public. There's a lot of people that have no idea. I had a conversation with my neighbor. It's been a couple of months ago now, but we were just out, moving sprinklers around during that big long stint of 100-degree weather we had a while back. And we were just talking, and he said how he went to Oklahoma on vacation, got a cabin, and stayed up there for a week, and said he went into a dispensary and tried to get a little something. Of course they wouldn't let him because he wasn't an Oklahoma resident, right? But they sold him some Delta 8 products and turned him onto that. And I said, dude, you get that right here in Texas, I said, not to mention, and I just happened to have one of the Good Blend pamphlets in my truck for a Good Blend in Texas here, one of our medical providers. And I went and grabbed that pamphlet and I went and showed him. I said, look, we even have legal medical program here in Texas. He said, no, we don't. I said, yeah, here, look. But, it's crazy.
We have a program. It ain't the best program.
it's still something, you know.
Yeah, we're kicking the can down the road with that. You know how, I mean, you guys are on the front line with that. And it's just one of the things that we try to do is when we work with advocacy groups is we let them know that, if our patients need to call, we did a lot of calls during the last session. We have a really good book of our patients, and we let them know that, hey, things could change and roll back or roll sideways. So we'd like for you to place this call. We have a cell phone in our office. I mean, we were really mobilizing where the patients come in, get on the cell phone. Can you just, call, let them know you support HB 1535, and then we'll keep it going. So that's important to hear from the patients, and not just
Absolutely.
you, not just a business person as we want to just make money, but to hear from the patients. I think that's the most influential voice.
Sure. You're telling me something I definitely need to work on now with getting some information out is finding out what the things that keep having to be repeated by your service lines to explain to future patients or possible patients what they're trying to figure out. That way they're just ready to come to any doctor, including y'all, to say, I read through these guidelines. I believe I qualify. I want to get an appointment and just make sure that I do or I don't.
Right. And I think the main issue with that is that the public, the ones that do have a little information, first of all, there's two segments. One to have absolutely no information. So you got to coddle them into what's going on and bring them up to speed. Then you have some that I've heard a little something here or there. They tend to think that they have to have it already diagnosed. And we all know that PTSD, especially with our law enforcement patients, what we found out in having very good conversations with them is that it goes undiagnosed because they'll lose their rank. So they tend to kind of keep that under the veil until later down the line or until it becomes a really big issue. So we have within our office, we have a mental health professional, 3 of them that will see patients via telemedicine. And then they can work a diagnosis up for that patient and then turn that patient over to us. And then we can go ahead and do our job, the certification. So a lot of times we let them know if you don't have any PTSD documentation, we understand that. If you're a veteran, we know how hard it is to get information and paperwork from the VA, then you can come in and we can assist you with working that diagnosis up. And that's one of the things that I think you guys need to try to get that out there, that you don't have to have all your ducks in a row. You can give them a call and they have a mental health expert on file, and we can get it done if you qualify.
I know I've created a website for our veteran side of things where I explain the steps of going through and what you need to get together if you do have documentation, because documentation really does help.
It does.
It's not required, and PTSD is one of those things that it's strangely, despite it being technically like a complex issue, it is very easy to diagnose. The DSM-5 has made that insanely easy because I think it's like 30 questions.
Yeah.
You answer these 30 questions and just they score that and they go, well, you likely have this. We can give you a diagnosis based on just that.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's ways of getting I know I posted up about getting information for veterans because there's an online system where you can just go and say, hey, I want my record. And they'll give you a digital copy of your record in a matter of like a minute.
Right.
So let's say the difficult thing is when you've got records and around at some private provider and they're like, oh, we want $50 for you to get a copy of your record.
And we do something real special for veterans on Thursdays. We do a discounted rate for veterans because we understand the ones that we have seen. Sometimes they've had to piece together. And that's something that we're implementing in January of 2023 is a payment program because some of them just don't have even the $50 to even start the process. So we work with them in a very, very flexible way. So we see a lot of those patients. We've reserved those spots on Thursdays for veterans, and we see them at a really, really good discounted rate.
Yeah, I'll say fixed income, and that's the big issue there is they're already having to budget everything else in their life, and it's usually taking up their budget, and then they've got this other issue that their insurance goes, no, we're not touching that.
At all. Exactly.
My personal recommendation is that the name of the health insurance company is called TriWest. So if your providers can get TriWest certified for something the VA would normally cover other than the typical medical marijuana, I've heard of patients being able to get covered. They need to get seen for rheumatoid arthritis.
Right.
And they go see a provider and that provider takes TriWest, but they're like, yo, I'm also a CURT registered physician.
Right.
So you get to kind of double up, and the VA's like whatever, because they don't get to. Strangely enough, they don't get to have that control They're like, we won't cover that in our system, but if they send it out in town, that's something
it's a comprehensive exam. What it's for is irrelevant, but it's it's still the same exam that you would be doing. And if they cover, as long as you meet the criteria of performing that exam, then they will cover it. So I need to really look into that for our network.
Yeah, a way I've kind of circled around on the VA, and this is an issue veterans face. I imagine it's a question that you guys get a lot, is that, do I lose my benefits if I get into this program? Will the VA be denying my benefits? And they can't deny you your compensation, but man, can they alter the other medications they want to give to you?
Yeah.
That is something I have faced. My psychiatrist at the VA was like, I'm fine with you being in the medical cannabis program. Our clinical pharmacist is not, and will want to drug test you if I have to put you on stimulants, which work well for you as well. And then they're going to kick you off the stimulants once you pop. The way I got around it was, I was like, well, I want community care then. I love how you're treating me, doc, but I can't have this little micromanaged system for things that work, where they're going to kick me off the things that work as well. Yeah. So they're sending me out under Tri-West to see the psychiatrist I already had under my TRICARE out in town. So I'm going to see the same doctor who's doing all the same stuff, but the VA is going to cover it. And I just got to pay for my state medical program out of my own pocket.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, one of the issues that we came across is that we did a program at a veterans residence. It's like an apartment complex here in Houston with, I think, maybe over 200 units. So we sponsored bingo, did a really informative. However, we were informed that if they were to have a dirty urinalysis test, then they could be asked to leave that particular residence. So that was challenging. Yeah. If they were to even get into the program, I guess part of their rent being paid or sponsored, or I'm not quite sure how the logistics of that went, but they would be subject to a drug test. And if they failed that drug test, they could be asked to vacate. So that's tough.
Yeah. And what I wonder then is, it becomes a question for y'all to ask, is that, what do they consider a dirty UA?
Right.
Because technically, if say they're on Ritalin, for whatever reason, they're going to obviously pop for cocaine usage.
Right.
But if they have the prescription attached, they go, well, this is no longer a dirty UA.
Right.
And will they acknowledge that prescription as well, like a lot of other private providers? And I'm surprised our legal system's starting to recognize it as well.
Yeah.
Do they recognize that?
Yeah, we have some people, and we've had some, obviously, just to test the waters and just to see if was there any case study. But we've had quite a few patients that are on supervised release, whether it's probation or what have you, and their probation officers honored they went to their supervisor. They've requested certified medicals from us, so we've had to actually put the medicals in an affidavit format and send it directly to their judge, court clerk, or whoever requested it. And the person didn't have any problem. As long as those medicals were certified and came directly from us in an affidavit format. So we've started doing that and asking patients, if you're on any supervised release, we're going to have to certify your medicals. We just need to get ahead of it.
That's real interesting there, because I interviewed a guy last year that basically was on probation for cannabis possession. I think there might even have been a little bit of intent to distribute along with that, but I forget exactly what all charges he had. But he also was a teacup patient, and he became a teacup patient strictly to go back to the state and say, hey, wait a minute, I'm a patient. You tell me to follow my doctor's orders, but if I follow my doctor's orders, I'm going to be violating my probation. So you tell me what to do. And of course, I never did hear what he did with that, but I need to follow up with him.
Yeah.
But
I think it gets a little sketchy based on what you're on probation for. I think if it's assault, or it's that kind of moves a little bit differently. But I think that if you're on for possession or something like that, then it may get a little gray. It may get into a little gray area. Yeah. I'm not quite sure. But the ones that we've dealt with, they haven't had a problem with violating or anything like that. So that's been good news.
Yeah, that is good news.
Well, it is time that we go into our first sponsor break here at the Lonestar Collective podcast. I'm your host, Jesse Williams. I'm joined this week by co-host Gramps. This week is episode 54. Our guest is Lamont Ratcliff of Texas Medical Marijuana Doctors. We'll be right back after this sponsor message.
Cultivators is a sponsor of Texas Cannabis Collective and the Lonestar Collective podcast. Oak Cliff focuses on quality assurance with their hemp products while providing customer service to help you discover cannabinoids to meet your needs. Their product line includes hemp flower, pre-rolls, CBG tinctures, edibles, Delta 8, and merch. For more information on their products' quality or to shop online today, visit oakcliffcultivators.com or contact them at info@oakcliffcultivators.com.
Thrive Apothecary offers an experience truly unique from anything else in Texas. A full-service cannabis solution that is doctor-owned and offers customers every level of cannabis legally available in Texas. From traditional CBD products to emerging hemp-derived THC edibles, smokables, and now medical cannabis. As a licensed medical cannabis provider, prospective patients from anywhere in Texas can book a sponsored online eligibility consultation to determine if they qualify for a medical marijuana prescription from the comfort of their own home. Plus, for Texas veterans, their first prescription appointment is donated by Thrive. Visit thrivetx.com for more information.
Welcome back to the Lonestar Collective podcast, the official podcast of Texas Cannabis Collective. Distributed on Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, Facebook, and much more to give Texans information regarding policy, industry, and culture. Here is this week's host, Jesse Williams and Gramps.
Welcome back to the Lonestar Collective podcast. I'm your host, Jesse Williams. I'm joined by co-host this week, Gramps. This week is episode 54. Our guest is Lamont Ratcliff of Texas Medical Marijuana Doctors. Welcome back to the break, everybody. How's everybody doing?
Well.
Good. How about yourself?
Awesome. Man, this episode's moving by quickly. It always does when we've got great conversation. So where exactly are y'all located at, Lamont?
So we have 3 locations here in Houston, which is on downtown Medical Center, Southwest Houston, and east side of Houston, going toward Beaumont, Baytown. And then we have 10 virtual offices throughout the state of Texas where we see patients through telemedicine, whether Dallas, Fort Worth, McAllen, Waco, Denton, the Valley, and I can't remember the other 2, I think Galveston. So 3 solid brick and mortar locations and 10 virtual offices where you can be in one of those outlying counties and go on Google and find us, and then we'll go ahead and make your visit virtual. Obviously, the virtual visit will happen in Houston via the internet, but we'll register you. You'll get everything certified through your email, and we've been doing pretty good with that as well.
Cool.
I was wondering how well the telehealth thing's been working, because I imagine when COVID hit, that was something everybody switched to that.
Right. And it's really good to capitalize off of, because it really helps the outlying counties, like those places where there's no dispensary, there's no doctor, in the program. Those people are crying out. They're just like, hey, where do I go? So it's very good for us to be able to bridge that gap through telemedicine, help them and do the things that, help them get into the program, and they can start understanding a better quality of life.
Yeah.
Speaking of there being no dispensary, something I've wondered, and maybe you can answer this, and if you can't, it's understandable, is that are the doctors allowed to, I get it, they prescribe what's in the Texas Compassionate Use Program. Do they recommend over-the-counter products that are part of our hemp program?
No, we don't. What we do is we prescribe, and most patients will say, hey, well, what's my next move? You can choose to go to a dispensary. The way that Texas has their ratio, you can almost go to a glorified CBD store probably and get what you need. So do your research. If you need us, and we'll circle back and we can point you in the direction. But if you go on Google, you'll see the dispensaries here in Texas and the options that you have.
Yeah.
Because I know it's very limited in what we can get a hold of. Yeah. And the products, I get it. They're like, we've got 10 milligram gummies. We've got some 20s. or 25s, and then there's other products that are out there that they're more value for your dollar. Really.
Absolutely. Yeah. We find that a lot of our patients, I would probably say if I had to put a number on it, 50%, probably 60% don't go to the dispensary.
Yeah.
They're, find an alternative, whether it's a CBD store or what have you. And that's the way that they purchase their medication because they can get a more bang for their buck.
Yeah.
They want to be protected, I guess, being in the program, possessing and, having their medication. They want to be just make sure that they're covered.
Chris, what's on your mind?
I was going to ask you, Lamont, how many success stories are you hearing on these return patients?
Lots. Actually, what we did was starting in July, because we saw patients in September, at the beginning of September of 2021, we started reaching out to them for recertification, let them know that a year is coming up. And I would probably say there's a 90% saying that, they enjoy the program. They have no problem coming back in, getting recertified. Very few opted out of the program. We're probably 90% retention rate. So they're very happy with the program. I mean, obviously, they all want more. They all want access to more. They all want the levels up. However, we do encourage them from a political and a business standpoint and a practical standpoint that participating in the program increases the numbers and it gives the lobbyists and the people that are pushing for more openness in the program, more leverage, because the more people that are in the program that, that shows that, hey, these are voters and these are people that can move the needle the right way.
Well, that was going to be my next thing. The success stories and people willing to speak about it and talk about it. If you have anybody like that, send them our way, because we're always looking to put those stories out there, because you're absolutely right. Getting more people involved in the program is one thing, but getting those people who are involved in the program to be vocal and tell their story and how it's helping them. And there are those that it's helped them get off alcohol. There are those that it's helped get off of tobacco. There are those that have stopped taking opioids because they're now in the teacup program. Yep. So the more of those stories we can get out there, send them our way.
Okay. And we on Fridays at our Crawford location, we see nothing but cancer patients. So they have some really heartfelt, strong, emotional stories about their quality of life. So I'll definitely make sure that I'll speak to Ariel, our vice president, and we can get some of those people to you because they're big on testimonials. They're very articulate and they've been through a lot.
Absolutely.
And that's not to say that we think alcohol should be banned or that tobacco should be banned or that people shouldn't be able to use, or even if doctors want to appropriately prescribe opiates, because it's strange. I've run into people in the movement that they're like, oh, we'll just get rid of those other things. This will replace that. It's like, we're not looking to replace anything. This needs to be an option on the table.
An alternative.
Yes.
As I told one of my son's doctors, it needs to be in the formulary. That's what it needs to be. The doctor has an option in the formulary to pick this out.
Right.
What would you say is the biggest pitfall from a Kurt perspective, from running a doctor's side of it?
I think that Kurt needs to open up definitely some intelligent form of communication with the patients. Sometimes patients have questions. Hey, I want to call DPS. Will this be on my license? Will my job have access to this Kurt system? Do state agencies? I'm a teacher. Say, hey, give Kurt a call. And they really don't have a line of communication with Kurt, like a hotline or FAQ type of situation, because it's so new. We have school teachers that say, hey, is this something that I'm going to apply for a vice principal job? One of them said, is this something that they can find out that I'm in this program? People are going through divorces. We have all kinds of situations that say, hey, can my wife's divorce, can her attorney find out that I'm part of this program or whatever? Mm-hmm. Hey, you call Kurt. I don't know exactly who has access to it. We have a doctor's portal. I don't know if law enforcement has a portal, a court system, or state agencies, if federal government has access. I don't know. We only have our portal. So those are good questions that they want to ask Kurt, and Kurt, they just can't get a direct answer. So I think Kurt needs to open up, hire some people and train them, and they can answer those questions. That's I don't have the answer to those.
That's interesting how you bring that up, because it's a tricky thing, because it's a health record. And obviously the doctor has to disclose his health record to the state by how it's set up.
Correct.
It's going into the registry system. But then it becomes, is like you said, what other agencies can look at this legitimately? They go, well, we have a legitimate interest in looking at this as like a government agency. Like you said, school teacher. Does the school district go, hey, well, we get to dig into that as we see fit? Or does it stay on which is private?
Right. Pre-employment screening.
Yeah.
Can they look at it and say, oh, and derive a synopsis of your character or what have you? I know that the probation departments that we deal with, supervised release, we require that they send us a medical authorization. We just don't turn over medical records because they're asking. So that person that's on supervised release has to sign a medical release authorization and authorizing them to obtain their medical records. We just don't arbitrarily give it to them.
And to be clear, because I've seen this, there is another way that technically they can get a hold of it. And that's basically a judge ordering it. They basically put out a subpoena going, they're like, we subpoena that information, give it to us.
Right.
Because I've heard some people go, oh, they can't do that. They can't just go grab my record. And if the judge puts a subpoena for it, they're getting it.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. And if you're on supervised release, there's some judge that's over your situation.
Yep.
Exactly. So, yeah. That reminds me, I only know of one person so far that hasn't been allowed to use teacup as part of their, I think it was like deferred adjudication. And what it came down to was that their attorney did not want to bother with having the doctor be present for the hearing. The doctor wrote a letter, their therapist wrote a letter, and the probation officer involved was like, I don't want to do this. I don't like it. And the person could have fought it, but their attorney was like, I don't really want to fight this. They said no. The answer is no. Good luck convincing the judge. The probation officer said no. And speaking to a doctor about it, he was like, I've never heard of this. Every time that it's happened, we show up. Like we either appear on Zoom or we show up in person or on phone call and acknowledge, hey, I'm the physician. I wrote this. I'm saying this under oath. This is the recommendation. He's like, and every time the judge goes, fine.
Yep.
We're going to go with you.
And there's an affidavit, a medical affidavit format that certifies the medicals under oath, get it notarized, and that serves as testimony in any court. And that's basically what we do. We just, we've had our attorneys draft one, and we haven't had any kickback when we produce the medicals under a certified format.
And for those who don't know, an affidavit is basically just a sworn statement that's been notarized, and that's it. It's under oath without being in court.
Correct. Yes.
What would you say has been something that when y'all were getting started, y'all didn't think was going to be an issue with getting patients in, but has been like a major obstacle?
Getting patients in. What has been a major obstacle with getting patients in? I would say something that's that we had to adjust our schedule to is because it's not covered by insurance, is our patients toward the end of the month, because that's kind of when people's auxiliary income becomes a little bit short. So we see probably about 50% load toward the end of the month. So what we've tried to do is and I don't want to say it too much because I don't want people to start booking toward the end of the month, but we'll do a percentage off for the last week of the month.
What comes to my mind is veterans. You mentioned the veterans thing.
Yeah.
My paycheck for my compensation, my bank goes, we're going to give it to you the day early. So it's supposed to come on the 1st. It'll sometimes come on the 30th. If it lands on like a weekend, I may get on like the 26th or 27th.
Yeah.
So I can imagine you're probably going to see an uptick of like veterans towards the end of the month if they're getting that paycheck in that way.
Yep. And then one of the things initially was because we didn't have a mental health expert on file. We were just accepting the patients that already had the diagnosis of PTSD with the paperwork. But I had to bring someone in, and I just got it from the state of Florida's format. I started looking at the way that they were doing things, and I looked at some of the doctors, and they were contracting with mental health professionals via Zoom and adding that into the cost of the visit to make sure that the patient had the proper diagnosis before we saw them. And
we're going to go into a sponsor break here, but that's something I want to talk about again when we come back, because it's a way doctors are set up and what they can diagnose is kind of confusing, and there's ways of getting around issues with that. We're going to go into a spot break here at the Lonestar Collective Podcast. I'm your host, Jesse Williams. I'm joined by co-host Gramps this week. This week's episode 54. Our guest is Lamont Ratcliff of Texas Medical Marijuana Doctors. We will be right back after these sponsor messages.
Oak Cliff Cultivators is a sponsor of Texas Cannabis Collective and the Lonestar Collective podcast. Oak Cliff focuses on quality assurance with their hemp products while providing customer service to help you discover cannabinoids to meet your needs. Their product line includes hemp flower, pre-rolls, CBG tinctures, edibles, Delta 8, and merch. For more information on their products' quality or to shop online today, visit oakcliffcultivators.com or contact them at info@oakcliffcultivators.com.
Thrive Apothecary offers an experience truly unique from anything else in Texas. A full-service cannabis solution that is doctor-owned and offers customers every level of cannabis legally available in Texas. From traditional CBD products to emerging hemp-derived THC edibles, smokables, and now medical cannabis. As a licensed medical cannabis provider, prospective patients from anywhere in Texas can book a sponsored online eligibility consultation to determine if they qualify for a medical marijuana prescription from the comfort of their own home. Plus, for Texas veterans, their first prescription appointment is donated by Thrive. Visit thrivetx.com for more information.
Welcome back to the Lonestar Collective podcast, the official podcast of Texas Cannabis Collective. Distributed on Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, Facebook, and much more to give Texans information regarding policy, industry, and culture. Here is this week's host, Jesse Williams and Gramps.
Welcome back to the Lonestar Collective podcast. I'm your host, Jesse Williams. I'm joined this week by co-host Gramps. This week is episode 54. Our guest is Lamont Ratcliff of Texas Medical Marijuana Doctors. We were just discussing about who can diagnose what, like getting mental health physicians in and to cover things like PTSD and getting those types of diagnoses done. I had to go look up the term while we were on break. It's an internist. And I didn't know about this until I was getting a VA compensation and pension exam. And it's a weird thing. The Texas legislature said that a specialist who specializes in that thing must be the one who diagnoses and deals with this. An internist is a specialist pretty much of everything. Their job is to diagnose these things and then pass it off to a specialist. So it's almost like a loophole in our system that if you have an internist on staff, someone who's qualified as such, they can diagnose practically anything. And make these recommendations. I don't know if you've run into that, if you've heard of that, Lamont.
I have not. I would probably say our patient population is probably 70% PTSD, maybe 10% autism, 25% cancer. And obviously the cancer patients come in with all the diagnosis. The autism come in with all the diagnosis. And the PTSD, not really a bunch of paperwork to back up the diagnosis. So those are the ones that we have to work up.
I'm wondering, because it's something we added, it was supposed to be like the big add-in was incurable neurodegenerative diseases. Mm-hmm. I was wondering, are you running into that at all? Or?
No, we haven't ran into many of those at all. I mean, that blanket, I talked to Dr. Macbeth about that. That covers quite a bit. However, trying to articulate that to the patients, they just kind of fall into the PTSD. When you start talking to them about that, they just kind of fall into the PTSD diagnosis.
Because something that I remember bringing up with somebody.
I think our biggest challenge is going to be, I think we need to get chronic pain on there. I think that's the biggest challenge. Honestly, that's going to help a lot of people. And also that's going to open up the program to a lot more people and us being able to educate a lot more people, register a lot more people through CURT and help a lot more people. Because even the PTSD patients, their major diagnosis is chronic pain. Their sub-diagnosis is PTSD. It may be a car accident that they had a very, very bad car accident. 4 or 5 herniated disc plates within them. They're dealing with a lot of chronic pain. And we have to revert back to the actual accident and the remembrance of in the mental part of the accident to diagnose the PTSD. But the chronic pain is actually their initial diagnosis, but we just have to go with their sub-diagnosis to qualify them.
Yeah.
I think probably because that seems to be what I've talked to doctors about when they're using the term chronic pain. Some of them that are in favor of having medical cannabis, they get scared. They've told me they're scared for that because they think that's too broad of a term. They're like, well, what's chronic pain? Did this happen and all of a sudden you're just complaining that it's pain all the time? And the term that I heard during the legislative session the last two, and some doctors have recommended, is neuropathy, because that tends to be a lot of the chronic pain issues are caused by this nerve damage.
Right.
And that's something that's been on my mind, is like, how do we go about dealing with that? Because like there's another one we have in our list, but basically equates to muscle spasms. And when you say muscle spasms, doctors go, a nervous twitch in your eye could be considered a muscle spasm. Are we going to get medical cannabis for that?
Yeah.
Right. And there's a test. There's a neurological test that you have to perform to officially diagnose this neuropathy. So you have to have that machine that does that. So, because a lot of patients coming in don't have that paperwork.
In the video, well, it looks like we lost Lamont there. We're running short on time, so we're going to go into our next sponsor break here at the Lonestar Collective podcast. I'm your host, Jesse Williams. I'm joined by co-host Gramps. This week was episode 54. Our guest was Lamont Ratcliff of Texas Medical Marijuana Doctors. We'll be right back after these sponsor messages, and we will be wrapping up our show with our last segment. You don't want to miss it. Be right back.
Oak Cliff Cultivators is a sponsor of Texas Cannabis Collective and the Lonestar Collective podcast. Oak Cliff focuses on quality assurance with their hemp products while providing customer service to help you discover cannabinoids to meet your needs. Their product line includes hemp flower, pre-rolls, CBG tinctures, edibles, Delta 8, and merch. For more information on their products' quality or to shop online today, visit oakcliffcultivators.com or contact them at info@oakcliffcultivators.com.
Thrive Apothecary offers an experience truly unique from anything else in Texas. A full-service cannabis solution that is doctor-owned and offers customers every level of cannabis legally available in Texas. From traditional CBD products to emerging hemp-derived THC edibles, smokables, and now medical cannabis. As a licensed medical cannabis provider, prospective patients from anywhere in Texas can book a sponsored online eligibility consultation to determine if they qualify for a medical marijuana prescription from the comfort of their own home. Plus, for Texas veterans, their first prescription appointment is donated by Thrive. Visit thrivetx.com for more information.
Welcome back to the Lonestar Collective podcast, the official podcast of Texas Cannabis Collective. Distributed on Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, Facebook, and much more to give Texans information regarding policy, industry, and culture. Here is this week's host, Jesse Williams and Gramps.
Welcome back to the Lonestar Collective podcast. I'm your host, Jesse Williams. I'm joined by co-host Gramps this week. This week was episode 54. Our guest was Lamont Ratcliff of Texas Medical Marijuana Doctors. We lost Lamont a moment ago, but if you're interested, Gramps laughing about it. It was unfortunate. It happens. Internet company goes, no, you're talking about the marijuanas again. We can't be talking that. Guys out in Houston, Austin, Dallas, they're all talking about the marijuanas. Hell no. If you're looking for more information about Texas Medical Marijuana Doctors, you can visit them at texasmedicalmarijuanadoctors.com. We've put the link down in the bottom of our video. That's Texas spelled out for those of you who are listening in, TEXAS, medicalmarijuanadoctors.com.
It's a long one.
Yeah, it's a long one, but spell it out, TEXAS. Unlike Texas State, which is TX. They always having to tell us that when I started going to university. It's TX, not TEXAS. But yeah, if you want more about their organization, how to get an appointment, visit TexasMedicalMarijuanaDoctors.com. We thank Lamont for joining us despite the disadvantage we had of the call being out for him. We hope we can get him back on here again in the future, talk more about what's going on in the state of Texas with our Kurt physicians. But we've got other events coming up. You want to know about these types of things, and Gramps has the info on that. The 411, tell us about it.
Well, the biggest thing is, coming up in a couple of weeks, about 3 weeks to be exact, or a little over 3 weeks, is the Texas Marijuana March and Freedom Festival coming up in beautiful downtown Fort Worth, Texas, on October 8th from noon to 7 p.m. We've got 36 vendors. We're sold out. All our vendor spots are sold out. So 36 vendors, everything from CBD to Delta 8, Delta 9, hemp-derived, clothing, glassware, arts, crafts, you name it. We're going to have food trucks. We've got musical performances scheduled, as well as the annual march to the courthouse with a little bit of civil disobedience. And that's coming up, like I say, in about 3.5 weeks, October 8th in downtown Fort Worth, Texas.
Be a fun time. I've been
Absolutely.
all the acronyms in my head on my CBD and BDC and DBC and BDSM and
easy.
Strike.
But no, it's going to be a great one. We always have a real great time. City of Fort Worth is really great and works with DFW Normal, and of course the collective is involved this year as well. I just got to say that it's amazing at how well this partnership has grown over the years, and the fact that the police and everybody works together, fire, emergency services. It's real interesting to sit in that meeting, with the city as we're planning and getting ready for this thing. So it's going to be an exciting time.
Well, if you've made it this far, we thank you for listening in and joining us in our wild and crazy discussions here at the Lonestar Collective Podcast, the official podcast of the Texas Cannabis Collective. We asked that you will tell a friend, somebody who hasn't been to an event, hasn't been out in a while, they want to do something outdoors. October 8th at the Burnett Park in Fort Worth. Time to come out. Be plenty of fantastic speakers. I know Colt DeMorse is coming all the way out from El Paso, so that's a hell of a drive.
Yeah, we've got people coming from El Paso, Corpus, Houston, Texarkana. I've seen people even from Amarillo saying they're coming. So don't tell me you can't come. It's too far. I don't want to hear that, because if they can do it, you can too. It's just one weekend.
Come for this to learn. Get ready for our legislative session, because the next time I would say you have to come, will be legislative session.
Yep, absolutely.
That is the next time we need people to show up. And this is where we're going to start informing people, right with this date. So yet again, we thank you for your time here at the Lonestar Collective Podcast. I'm host Jesse Williams. I'm joined by co-host Gramps this week. I said this week was episode 54. Our guest was Lamont Ratcliff of Texas Medical Marijuana Doctors. It's been quite the evening. We hope everybody has a great time. Start enjoying your fall this week with our 100-degree fall day. Y'all have a good one. Peace and love, everybody.